Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for Andor Episode 5. So, I feel very similarly about this episode to the way I felt about the last one, and that is that, in general, the show remains good, of a high quality, but I am finding it to be a bit slow. I don't think it's like super slow and the pacing is just completely wrong, but this show I think would be a lot better if it was just a little bit faster paced, and it, I think, just used its time a little bit more effectively. I get people are enjoying them giving the actors like a chance to, really shine in some of these longer dialogue scenes, but given what actually happens per episode, I really think you could cut a lot of these scenes down and just get to the point a little bit quicker than they actually are. Again, it's not a major criticism, but it is something I am noticing quite a bit, and that's been a bit of my disconnect with regards to the way I feel about the show versus a lot of what I'm seeing online is people really praising the slow burn nature of it. But this was probably the biggest episode so far that has highlighted that, like there's a point at which it goes from being like a good slow burn to just being, you need to pick things up a little bit. I'll be honest, I went into the episode, I was expecting the heist to actually at least start in this episode, and I suppose we're right there on the verge of it starting right at the end of the episode. Given how they ultimately went with it, okay, I get it, what they're doing here. 2 episodes of setup, so you know the people involved in this a little bit better. That will make the emotional big events of the action-packed 3rd episode, episode 6, next week, feel a little bit stronger. But after these 2 episodes of setup, I really don't feel like we know all the members of the crew like that well. In the sense that there was definitely the opportunity to cut down these scenes, get across as much information as we needed, but then still have other scenes with the characters to fill in a little bit more time. That there was still the idea of like, it's a group of characters that we don't know that well. Here's sort of 1 or 2 scenes with each of these characters so that we know them a little bit more going in. I think the dynamic has been decent, but I'm not blown away by it by any means. Nothing particularly stands out about this rebel cell to me. There were some tense scenes, but again, I don't know if I should go into any sort of analysis on it, just because I'm not really sure overall necessarily what the trajectory of the show is, because I'm guessing we might not see a lot of these characters after the next episode, whether because maybe 1 or 2 of them will get killed, or just because I get the sense we're going to be moving on to other things, and this might just be the arc for these specific characters. There were other little things that were like, I'm not sure why they're being so coy about the whole, here's what Vel and Cinta are doing on the mission. In that, like, you're basically telling us every other aspect of it except what they're doing. And especially after all the scenes where it felt like, effectively getting across the idea, we need to trust each other a little bit more to make this work. We need to stop being so suspicious of everyone and just accept that we're here, we're trying, that's what's going on. Yet they're still not telling him what like a good amount of the team is actually going to be involved with. I actually quite liked the scenes with the lieutenant, because I felt like those actually like accomplished stuff without going on for like a needlessly long amount of time. I like that you just get across the idea of like, oh, he has a connection to this planet, the little bit of backstory that they gave him. I felt like that was sort of enough to highlight this is why he's effectively switched sides. And he notes and in a way connects with the rest of the people under his command over the idea that a lot of them sort of do appreciate the beauty of this planet, and that one of the things all of them are looking forward to is the opportunity to see the eye, which is going to be used as a key part of the heist, of course. The scene later on where he It's just a subtle little kind of manipulation type thing where he gets the information he needs about basically everyone under his command. That like, okay, everyone wants to be outside to see the eye at that time. Minimal amount of people inside, and he plays his role quite well, being the sort of strict commander, but keeping them on his side by being fair to them. That was actually, I thought, pretty well done overall. But then, at the same time, you had like the other plots, like the whole Cyril Karn plot. Like I didn't know what to make of those scenes. Like, I get it, he's been fired and he's now in a rough spot and he doesn't seem to have any immediate kind of transition plan for what way he wants to go. But it was a bunch of dialogue scenes about like his uncle or something like that, and just him interacting with his mother in a kind of weird dynamic that I didn't really get what they were going for. It feels like there's some backstory that we need to get at some point to understand it a little bit better. And then they ultimately just get to the point that I felt like we were at from the previous episode and almost before that, which is that this character is ultimately going to jump back into the plot and be involved in basically investigating Andor and the event that effectively caused him to get fired and put him into this situation. Which is like, fine, but wow, you didn't need like anywhere near as many of those scenes as I think you did. And I was just left like, what are you doing with this character? I didn't get much depth or anything like that from those scenes necessarily. It was just like, okay, that's fine. Similarly, the Mon Mothma stuff, I think it's a little bit clearer what they're trying to do, but it's like, why are you doing her arc in this way? That, like, I thought we were going to get to see the dinner party with Mon Mothma's enemies, and that will be how we sort of jump into the political landscape and what's going on with Mon Mothma. But instead, like what the previous episode focused on with sort of her weird relationship with her husband, they introduce her daughter here, who also has a bit of a weird relationship. And I get what they're going for. They seem to be presenting the idea that, in a way, the secrets that she has to keep is this whole other job on top of already a busy job that she has. And so there's a disconnect forming between her and her whole family. Now, how much you're meant to really be critical of Mon Mothma in this situation versus how much are you meant to be sort of critical of her family for kind of, I suppose, her husband for just coming across as being sort of almost too kind to the Empire and maybe not being as helpful as he perhaps could be. The daughter for just being sort of the sort of sulky kind of teenager character. It's a little bit unclear, but it's like, I thought this was meant to be some sort of a political plot related to like her securing funds and what stuff for the rebellion she's doing behind the scenes, but we haven't got there yet. And it's like, I get it. We're doing the slow burn, slow build stuff, but 2 episodes of involvement of this character, and I feel like, are we just going to get more family drama in the next episode, or are we actually going to get into what we're actually trying to do here? I think there's a balance that this show needs to find between trying to do kind of in a way the exact opposite of most other Star Wars stuff, which is quite fast-paced. They've gone in the complete opposite direction, and I think have gone too slow-paced. There's a balance to be found between the two. Somewhere in the middle is what we need, and this, I think, has gone too far in the other direction. And so in that sense, I understand why people are finding it unique and different. But as I've said before, I've read Star Wars novels that are a little bit slower paced, do this sort of stuff with the characters. So that uniqueness isn't really kind of like hitting me all that much. And I'm kind of like, yeah, can we just, get to what we're actually trying to do here? Because we're 5 episodes in, and I don't feel like we really have like a particularly notable character arc sort of just yet. I do feel the heist, the action stuff in the heist is going to be sort of important for Andor as a character. Which other of the characters are going to actually remain in the series and be present going on for more than just a handful of episodes. That will be interesting to see. Because I suppose one interesting thing we did get from this was sort of the idea that Andor interacting with them more sort of made it more clear that this is very much a ragtag group, that there's not that many of them. They're prepared as much as they can be, but ultimately they don't have the information or the specialized skills that are really necessarily going to like get them through this. And so them looking sort of like amateurs discussing like, well, this is how the ship is going to like take off, and like how does it work, and he has to be like, you don't know. That was sort of an interesting one. And then I liked what they ultimately got to with the scene of him just presenting the idea of like, you know, don't use the fact that I'm basically like a hired mercenary on this squad as the excuse for why you can't participate in this. I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm going to participate in this. But don't use me as the reason for why you guys are like afraid of kind of what's happening here. That was kind of nice to see, because it did present the idea that like Andor, despite being new to all of this, seems to actually have the potential to be the best rebel operative of them all, because he just seems to have the information, the eye for detail that some of the others don't necessarily have. The other characters, Deidre, just really quick scene. She's still investigating what's going on. The guy just under her is basically telling her, don't give up. They may not see it as like an obvious connection, but you know, it's too random to be random. I think you are right to see some sort of a connection between what is happening. So she's going to continue her search. And again, it's like, okay, I get it. You needed the scene there. But fundamentally, did that add or change anything? Not really. The guy who's sort of her rival, we just got the idea he's setting up the base of operations on the planet that the corporate security was in charge of from before. And it's just like, okay, I get it. Fine. That's what we're doing there. But that was kind of really it. Other than that, like I think that's pretty much everything. The Luthen scene I did like, because I think that is a character who actually does stand out quite a bit. So seeing him sort of worried about this, of like wanting to get like a checkup now, but it's like the day before it's all actually going to happen, and his assistant having to be the one to sort of calm him down, was nice to just see that, you know, he's been fairly composed through everything that's happened so far. Yet here on like the eve of the operation about to happen, he is, he doesn't know what to do with himself. He wants to be on the comms, basically waiting for the result of the mission right then and there, but it's not the right thing to do. He has to keep doing what he has to do. So that was a nice, effective kind of scene with him, given that it seems like until that mission comes to an end, his plot, we don't really know necessarily what's going on, because again, they're not doing much with Mon Mothma in terms of like her connection to the plot, obviously. So there was that. As for like I suppose the other characters, this was the episode where I felt like they really heavily implied that Cinta and Vel were a couple. It was just the idea, like I think the guy from the start of the episode was just like, you know, don't get any ideas. She's basically already in a relationship, and when they cut over, it is those two like kind of standing close to each other. But then you have other scenes later on in the episode where Andor is like talking to her, and then Vel sort of like cuts in kind of like randomly, feeling a bit like, what? So I'm guessing that's going to be some sort of a reveal. We'll see if they do it as any sort of a surprise thing, or if it's just like, oh, that's what you meant. But you know, that was there. The kind of smart guy in the group, what's his name? Nemec, I think it is. They got across the idea like he has like a manifesto. He seems to have more of the kind of ideals of things. He uses kind of lower level technology to avoid using kind of Imperial stuff. That was kind of nice. But again, you can sort of see what they're doing here is that most of the characters do, for the most part, only really have one sort of like key trait to them. So it's not like the show is doing anything more than other, like, we meet a whole new group of characters and don't have enough time to fully develop all of them. We still have that going on here fundamentally. So that's why I'm not freaking out about how super impressive this show is necessarily. I'm waiting for it to really deliver on scenes that really do sort of surprise me. And that's why I do have sort of high expectations for the heist actually happening, just to see how it actually goes down, in the sense that, you know, what characters are going to get hurt or die in all of this. Because as much as the lieutenant guy is on the rebel side, I get the impression he probably doesn't want to see most of his men get hurt in all of this. And I'm guessing some people are going to die. They're probably going to emphasize that to a certain degree, of like him being upset that the people he ultimately has sided with have to kind of gun down his men to accomplish the mission. It feels like there's maybe a setup for like someone on the rebel party side of things is going to betray them. It's not going to come to fruition in some way. We obviously have the eye and how they visually show that, how well that works. I think from the trailers we know Andor is going to at some point pilot a TIE fighter. Whether that happens in this episode, the next upcoming episode, or not, I'm not sure. That would be a nice sort of like twist to have in all of this, that like something goes wrong, the mission isn't going to work, what if we steal a TIE fighter? That feels like one way to sort of accomplish some of the problems. And then obviously, will any of our cast here of this new group actually get killed during the mission? So there is some intrigue going into this, but I don't think it's anything more than any particular setup like this has. It's just, like I said, this show is, to me, very, very solid. It has a high production level. It looks really good. The actors seem all in. But I think a lot of that stuff can be done with other shows, which is why I'd be very much pushing back on the idea that, like, what I've seen a lot of is just like, why couldn't Kenobi kind of be like this? I'm just like, Kenobi was good. Like why are we kind of lying to ourselves here and saying that Kenobi was bad because this show exists, when Kenobi has aspects to it that are much better than this show? And yes, production-wise, some of the stuff from this show is better than Kenobi, but you know, again, balance, trying to be balanced with this overall, I think is the point. That sure, it doesn't need to be full Kenobi, also doesn't need to be full Andor. Like the ideal Star Wars show probably, like I said, is somewhere more in the middle. But I think that's basically everything I want to say about the show. I'm waiting for the kind of big thing to happen, whether that be a character moment, a big action scene, just to sort of see, okay, this is what this show is truly about. Because I get it, there's the whole rebellion stuff going on, but I'm not buying into this too much as like, this is the start of the rebellion type thing. So I'm kind of wondering, what is the bigger picture of this series in terms of where we're going? And I guess next episode we'll probably have to see the result of the heist. That money, huge amount of money, where is that going? And does Andor immediately move up to connecting with the kind of more established rebellion stuff? And that will probably be the big telling stuff in the series. So they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that's been it. Thanks for watching, and bye.